23 years. That's how long David and I had been married when he forgot our anniversary for the first time. I woke up that Tuesday morning with the familiar flutter of excitement I'd felt every September 15th since 1999. Our wedding anniversary had always been sacred to us, a day we protected fiercely from work obligations, family drama, and the endless demands of raising 3 children. Even during the lean years, when money was tight, we'd find ways to celebrate. Picnics in the park, homemade dinners by candlelight, long walks reminiscing about our courtship. This year felt especially significant. With our youngest finally off to college, it would be our first anniversary as empty nesters. I had been looking forward to it for months, imagining intimate conversations over wine, remembering who we were before we became mom and dad. David had made reservations at Chez Laurent, the French restaurant where he'd proposed all those years ago. I knew because I'd seen the confirmation email when borrowing his laptop to pay bills. The reservation was for 7:30 p.m., table for 2, with a note requesting the same corner booth where we got engaged 24 years ago. The detail had made my heart skip. After all these years, he still remembered our special place. I spent the afternoon getting ready with the care of a woman preparing for a first date. I wore the emerald green dress he'd complimented at our neighbor's wedding last month, styled my hair the way he liked it, and even splurged on the expensive perfume I usually saved for special occasions. At 6:30, I sat in our living room, purse in hand, watching the driveway for his headlights. David typically got home from his accounting firm by 6 on weekdays, giving us plenty of time to freshen up before dinner. 6:45 came and went, then 7 o'clock. At 7:15, I called his office, but it went straight to voicemail. His cell phone did the same. At 8:45, David's BMW finally pulled into our driveway. I watched from the window as he sat in the car for several minutes, talking animatedly on his phone. When he finally came inside, he looked surprised to see me dressed up and sitting in the darkened living room. "Hey, honey," he said, casually, loosening his tie. "You look nice. Going somewhere?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Going somewhere? On our anniversary? To the restaurant where he'd made reservations? "It's our anniversary, David," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. I watched his face cycle through confusion, realization, then something that looked almost like panic. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. "Oh God, Melissa. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Work has been absolutely insane, and I've had my head completely buried in the Morrison account. I can't believe I—" He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I had seen him make countless times when he was stressed or guilty. "Can we reschedule? Maybe this weekend?" Reschedule our anniversary. As if it was a dentist appointment or a casual lunch date. As if 23 years of marriage could be moved to a more convenient time slot. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, who was already snoring peacefully, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly I had become invisible to the man who had once moved heaven and earth to make me happy. I had no way of knowing that his forgetfulness wasn't actually forgetfulness at all. The weeks following our forgotten anniversary were marked by a strange new dynamic in our household. David seemed to be overcompensating for his oversight with an almost manic attention to domestic details, bringing me flowers without occasion, complimenting my cooking excessively, suggesting weekend trips to places we'd talked about visiting someday. But beneath his newfound attentiveness, I sensed something hollow, performative. His gestures felt scripted, like he was following a manual titled How to Be a Good Husband, rather than acting from genuine affection or remorse. "I was thinking we could drive up to the wine country next weekend," he suggested one Thursday evening over dinner. "You've always wanted to do that tour of the historic vineyards." It was true. I had mentioned wanting to visit the wine region multiple times over the years, But the way he brought it up now, with forced enthusiasm and a studying expression that suggested he was carefully monitoring my reaction, made me suspicious rather than grateful. The Morrison account had become his go-to explanation for every late night, every missed dinner, every distracted conversation. According to David, this mysterious client required an unprecedented amount of attention, demanded meetings at odd hours, and generated crises that could only be resolved with David's personal intervention. I began paying closer attention to his stories, noting inconsistencies and strange details. The Morrison account seemed to require an unusual amount of weekend work for a tax preparation project. David would disappear for client meetings that lasted 4 or 5 hours on Saturday afternoons. His explanations for these lengthy sessions were always vague: complex restructuring, detailed financial projections, sensitive personal matters that require careful handling. One evening in late October, David announced he would be working late again on Morrison paperwork. After he left, I did something I had never done in 23 years of marriage. I called his office to check his story. "Richardson and Associates, this is Jenny." "Hi, Jenny. This is Melissa Richardson, David's wife. I was hoping to catch him before he left for the day." "Oh, hi, Mrs. Richardson. Actually, Mr. Richardson left around 4 today. Said he had an off-site meeting with a client." An off-site meeting that was supposed to be at the office, working on paperwork. I hung up, feeling sick and disoriented, like the ground beneath my marriage had shifted without warning. That weekend, I volunteered to pick up David's dry cleaning, something he usually handled himself, hoping to find some clue that would either confirm or dispel my growing suspicions. In the pocket of his navy suit jacket, I found a restaurant receipt from Chez Laurent, dated 3 days after our anniversary. The receipt was for 2 people, 2 glasses of the house wine, the signature duck à l'orange, the chocolate soufflé for dessert, the same meal we had ordered during our engagement celebration 24 years ago, the same meal we would have ordered on our anniversary if he had remembered. But this receipt included a detail that made my hands shake as I read it. A handwritten note from the server that said, "Happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson. So wonderful to see you celebrating here again." David had taken someone else to our restaurant on a date that wasn't our anniversary. Someone who the server had mistaken for his wife. The betrayal felt like drowning. Not just the affair itself, but the calculated cruelty of it. He hadn't forgotten our anniversary dinner. He had replaced it. He had taken our reservation, our restaurant, our special booth, and shared it with another woman. That evening, when David returned from another supposed Morrison account emergency, I confronted him with the receipt. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the paper with hands that I fought to keep steady. David's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, calculation, and finally resigned defeat. "Melissa, I can explain." "Can you? Because this looks like you took someone else to our anniversary dinner 3 days after you forgot it was our anniversary." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the receipt as if it might provide him with an acceptable explanation. Finally, he looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not quite guilty, not quite defiant, but something exhaustingly tired. "Her name is Claire," he said quietly. "She's a client, but she's also... We've been seeing each other for about 8 months." 8 months. While I had been planning our anniversary celebration, David had been building a relationship with someone else. While I had been talking about reconnecting as empty nesters, he had been connecting with another woman. "The Morrison account?" I said. not really asking. There is no Morrison account. The confession hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that had been burning undetected for months. 23 years of marriage reduced to a lie about a fictional client and a restaurant receipt that told the real story. Finding Claire turned out to be easier than I had expected. David's phone, which he had forgotten in his hasty departure, provided most of the information I needed. While I had no intention of snooping through years of his personal communications, the recent messages with Claire M. were impossible to ignore. The conversation thread revealed a woman who seemed genuinely infatuated with my husband. Her messages were warm, funny, and completely devoid of any awareness that she was involved with a married man. She talked about future plans, mentioned wanting him to meet her sister, and sent photos of apartment listings with comments like, "What do you think? Big enough for two?" She was planning a life with him, a life that included cohabitation, meeting family members, and what appeared to be a serious, committed relationship. Meanwhile, David's responses were carefully crafted to sound engaged while committing to nothing specific. He was apparently planning to string along both his wife and his girlfriend indefinitely. From their messages, I learned that Claire worked as a marketing coordinator for a nonprofit downtown, lived in the arts district, and had been divorced for 2 years. She seemed kind, intelligent, and completely unaware that the man she was falling in love with was lying to her as thoroughly as he had been lying to me. The most revealing exchange had taken place the day after their dinner at Chez Laurent. "Claire, last night was absolutely perfect. Thank you for choosing somewhere so special and romantic. I felt like we were the only two people in the world." "David, I'm glad you enjoyed it. You deserve to be treated like a queen." "Claire, the way the waiter treated us like we were an old married couple was so sweet. Happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson." I almost corrected him, but it felt nice to pretend for a moment. "David, you never know what the future holds." She had no idea that the waiter wasn't pretending, that she had been sitting at a table reserved for David's actual wife, that she had unknowingly participated in one of the cruelest betrayals I could imagine. But the message that solidified my plan was one Claire had sent just 2 days before David's hasty confession. "I know you're going through a difficult time with your family situation, but I want you to know that I'm here for whatever comes next. When you're ready to move forward completely, I'll be ready too. You deserve happiness, David. You deserve someone who appreciates what an incredible man you are." Family situation. David had told her we were separated, maybe even divorced. He had painted himself as the victim of a failed marriage rather than the perpetrator of an affair. Claire thought she was supporting a man through a difficult transition, not enabling him to cheat on his wife. I spent the next week researching everything I could about Claire Morrison, her full name discovered through David's contacts. Her LinkedIn profile showed a professional woman in her late 30s who had worked her way up from assistant to coordinator at a nonprofit that provided services for homeless veterans. Her Instagram, which was public, revealed someone who loved hiking, rescued dogs, and volunteered at a literacy program on weekends. She seemed like a genuinely good person who had been completely deceived about the nature of her relationship with my husband. The plan that had been forming in my mind began to crystallize. David had stolen our anniversary dinner and given it to Claire. He had let her believe she was building something real with an available man. He had lied to both of us, but in different ways and for different purposes. Claire deserved to know the truth about the man she was planning a future with, and she deserved to understand what had actually happened that night at Chez Laurent. Making your reservation for 2 at Chez Laurent for November 18th turned out to be surprisingly complicated, but not for the reasons I had expected. The hostess was more than happy to accommodate my request for the corner booth, the same booth where David had proposed, where we had celebrated numerous anniversaries, where he had taken Claire just weeks after forgetting our actual anniversary. The complication arose when I realized I needed to ensure that Claire would actually show up for this dinner. Simply making a reservation in her name wouldn't guarantee her presence, and the entire plan depended on her being there to receive the message I intended to send. After several days of planning, I developed a strategy that felt both elegant and appropriate. I would call Claire's office, identify myself as a representative from a local business association, and inform her that she had won a hardworking, nonprofit professional appreciation dinner for two at Chez Laurent. The prize would include a full dinner with wine pairings and dessert. The reservation is for November 18th at 7:30 p.m. Does that work with your schedule? There was a pause, and I could practically hear her processing this unexpected good fortune. That's incredibly generous. Are you sure you have the right person? Absolutely sure. Claire Morrison, marketing coordinator at Veterans Hope, nominated for your work with the literacy program and your community involvement. The reservation will be under your name. Just mention the Business Alliance Appreciation Dinner when you arrive. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Can I bring anyone as my guest? Of course, the reservation is for two. We hope you enjoy your evening. After hanging up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and nervousness. The first phase of my plan was complete, but now came the more challenging part, ensuring that Claire would learn the truth about David in a way that was clear, undeniable, and impossible to rationalize away. November 18th arrived with perfect autumn clarity. I parked across from Chez Laurent, watching. Philippe would text updates. At 7:15, David's BMW pulled up. I watched him help Claire out. She was dressed beautifully. They disappeared inside. Philippe's texts came steadily. 7:45. They seem comfortable and happy. 8:30. She's mentioned how wonderful this surprise dinner is. He's taking credit. 9:15. Ready for dessert service. When Claire and David finished their main course, Philippe approached with special birthday dessert, a cake with "Happy Birthday, Claire," and underneath, "From the real Mrs. Richardson." Accompanying the cake was a card, "Dear Claire, the dinner you're enjoying tonight was originally reserved for my 23rd anniversary with David. He forgot our anniversary but remembered to bring you here 3 days later. You deserve someone who will tell you the truth. Melissa Richardson, David's wife." Also included were copies of our marriage certificate and the receipt from David and Claire's previous dinner. At 9:40, Philippe called. "It's finished. They've left. The young woman was upset, but she understood everything. She asked me to give you a message." "What did she say?" "She said to tell you that she's sorry and that she had no idea. She hopes you can find a way to forgive her someday." 3 days later, I received an email from Claire. "Mrs. Richardson, I am so incredibly sorry. I had no idea David was still married. He told me you had been divorced for over a year. I would never have gotten involved with a married man if I had known the truth. I broke up with him immediately after dinner on my birthday. I hope you can forgive me for unknowingly participating in hurting you. You handled this situation with more grace than I would have been capable of. I hope you find happiness." Reading her email, I felt anger at David for deceiving us both, sadness for Claire, and satisfaction that the truth had finally been revealed in a way that couldn't be ignored. David had turned our anniversary dinner into a tool for betrayal. I had turned Claire's birthday dinner into a tool for truth. David returned home 2 days later, looking defeated. We had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. "I don't know how to explain what happened," he began. "Claire made me feel young again. So you decided to lie to both of us rather than figure out what was wrong with our marriage?" Over the following weeks, we attempted couples counseling, but it became clear we wanted different things. David wanted to rebuild what we had lost. I wanted to understand how we had gotten to this point and whether it was possible to build something entirely new and honest. 3 months later, David and I separated permanently. The divorce was surprisingly amicable. The truth had come out in a way that made blame impossible to dispute. 6 months later, I returned to Chez Laurent for the first time since planning Claire's birthday dinner. Felipe greeted me warmly. "Would you like your usual table?" he asked, gesturing toward the corner booth. I looked at the spot where David had proposed, where we had celebrated anniversaries, where he had brought another woman, where Claire had learned the truth. "No," I said. "I'd like to try something new." As I ate dinner alone at a different table, I reflected on my transformation. The woman who had sat at home waiting for her husband to remember their anniversary was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who wouldn't tolerate lies or settle for being forgotten. David had forgotten our anniversary dinner, so I had given it to the woman he had been lying to. But in the end, the real gift hadn't been the dinner itself, it had been the truth that came with it, and the freedom that followed. Sometimes the most elegant solutions are also the most simple. Stop accepting lies, demand honesty, and refuse to be invisible. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.